There is nothing you need to achieve in order to be complete. There is no destination you must reach to live fully. Everything you have ever sought outside has always been present within you, waiting to be remembered, not through striving, but through awareness. This is not a journey of acquiring anything, but a journey of removing the layers that have hidden from you the deepest truth. You were created in the image of God, designed for abundance, for love, for freedom, and for light. And as you step into each chapter of this 16-part series, you are not merely reading a story, you are awakening a sacred memory within yourself, an invitation to return home to the place where you have always belonged. Forward, the divine law of thought and the path to prosperity. There is an invisible law that governs all things in the universe. It makes no noise, yet it never sleeps. It does not need your belief to operate, nor does it wait for your understanding to begin its work. It has been there since before history, before words themselves. It is silent yet all-powerful, and it determines the outcome of everything you are experiencing in life. This law is called thought, not just any thought, but the thought you believe to be true, the thought you empower through your attention, your emotions, and your habits. Everything you see on the outside is nothing more than a reflection of what is taking place within. Thought is the seed. Life is the field. And no one but you is planting the seeds each day. No success arrives by accident. No failure comes merely by misfortune. Everything has its root in the mind. This truth is not new, it is only often forgotten. And it is this forgetting that has driven so many into the endless cycle of suffering, lack, and confusion, believing that life is a game of chance, that God blesses a chosen few while abandoning the rest. But God does not play at random. He works through law. And the greatest law in the spiritual realm is the divine law of thought. If you live against it, it will feel as though the world has turned its back on you. If you live in harmony with it, the whole universe begins to open the way. Wealth does not need to be conquered. It needs to be recognized. Happiness does not need to be begged for. It needs to be allowed. Everything you have ever dreamed of is not out of reach. It is only that you have not yet realized you are living in the very source of it all. Like a thirsty man standing beside a flowing stream without bending down to drink. You are living in the midst of the promised land without knowing it. The law of thought has no emotions. It is not biased. It does not require you to be pious or proper. It simply operates according to the vibration you emit. If you believe you are unworthy, the law will work to prove you right. If you believe life is a battle, the law will arrange circumstances so that you must keep fighting. But if you awaken and begin to think in alignment with truth, the law will walk beside you, supporting every step you take. The power lies in where you place your mind, not in circumstances, not in the hands of others, not in policies or the state of the world. Your mind is the place where everything is decided, and this divine law is waiting for you to remember it. When you align with it, you cease to be a victim of life and become its creator. You no longer have to demand success. Success will find you naturally as the inevitable response of a mind that has come home. Someone once asked, if this law truly exists, why has no one taught it to me from the beginning? But you do not need anyone to teach you what your soul has always known. You are not learning, you are remembering. You are not creating the power, you are simply ceasing to block it. For the power has been within you since the very beginning. And every true journey is not about finding something new, but about returning to the state you once were. When you begin to see life as a reflection of thought, you will stop blaming. There will be no victims, no enemies, no unjust circumstances, only results, and each result is a lesson about what you are holding in your mind. This is not blind positive thinking. This is spiritual science a system as precise as the law of gravity, you may not believe in gravity, but you will still fall if you step off a roof. Likewise, you may not know of the law of thought, but you are still creating reality through it every day. And you will continue to do so until you consciously change direction. Every thought you choose is a door you open. Every emotion you hold is a message you send into the stream of life. And every belief you sustain is a prayer, effective, whether you call it a prayer or not. Therefore, true change does not begin with outward action, but with an inward decision, with choosing a new way of thinking, with refusing to repeat the old, with daring to believe that you are not locked inside a destiny, but that you carry the key to open any door. The divine law of thought does not merely help you succeed in work or finances, it leads you to complete freedom. Freedom comes from knowing you are no longer a victim of anything. You are the chooser. You are the one who sets the atmosphere. You are the one who determines the openness of the channel through which you receive. And when you truly understand this, a new stream begins to flow through your life. No more blockages. No more loops. No more pleading. Only awareness. Awareness that you are living in a complete universe where all good is already present. And you need only adjust the frequency of your thoughts to move in harmony with it. Everything you seek outside is only a reflection of what you have not yet seen within. Every delay in life arises from a place in the mind that has not yet awakened. And every miracle you have ever prayed for is in truth only the universe's response to a thought aligned with truth. The law of thought was not created to punish or test, it exists to set you free. And you are invited not to submit to it as a weak subject, but to unite with it as a co-creator. Now, if you are ready, let go of every old story. Turn inward, where you will see a door standing open, a door that does not lead to some far-off place, but opens into yourself, and within that door lies the source of everything you have ever sought. Reclaiming the origin, you were born to prosper. Have you ever been taught that living with just enough is already a blessing? That stability is something to be content with? That you should not desire too much because true happiness is about acceptance? Have you ever believed that only a select few are chosen to prosper while the rest must struggle daily just to hold on to a small fragment of peace? If you have ever thought this way, you are not alone. This belief has been sown into the minds of millions over generations. It hides beneath teachings that appear moral, yet in truth, it severs human beings from their inherent birthright of abundance. The problem is not that you lack talent, resources, or luck. The problem is that you have forgotten who you are. You were not born to shrink back in fear. You were not created to drag yourself through the days in worry. You were not shaped merely to scramble for the scraps left over. You were born to prosper, not in the narrow sense of money alone, but in the fullness of prosperity in mind, in body, in love, in work, and in every layer of experience. God did not create you to live in lack, but to be the place where He expresses His own infinite abundance. When you understand this, you will stop begging life for what has always belonged to you. You will no longer stand at the edge of a divine banquet thinking you have not been invited. You will walk in as one whose place has always been set. No effort is required to prove your worthiness, for you were worthy before you were even born. Worthiness is not a reward for effort. It is the root nature of your soul. Yet tragically, instead of realizing this, most of us have been taught to beg for scraps, to prove our value, to endure as a sign of humility. And it is from these distorted beliefs that lack is born not in the world, but first in the mind. When you believe, you must fight to earn the good. You are unconsciously declaring that this world is scarce. When you think you are not good enough to receive something great, You are installing a system of limitation within your very soul. But remember, God did not create limitation. Man creates limitation and then blames God for it. You may look around and see countless reasons to believe prosperity is far away. But if you look within, you will see something else. A part of you has always known you were made for more, a quiet call that cannot be silenced, an inner knowing that you did not come into this world merely to survive, but to shine. And if you are reading these words, perhaps it is time you listen to that call. It is time to reclaim the faith that was stolen from you. It is time to ask, why do I believe I am not allowed to live fully? Who planted in me the idea that I must live so cautiously, so humbly, that I forget who I am? And more importantly, how much longer will I remain inside the cage of limiting beliefs before I dare to fly toward the truth? I ask you this not to demand an immediate answer, but to awaken a part of you, the part that has been silent for too long, because with just one moment of realization, one spark in consciousness, everything can begin anew. Imagine living as though prosperity were natural. No more guilt in receiving, no more shame in success, no more shrinking your dreams for fear of being called ambitious. You do not do this for others, you do it as an act of love for the divine essence God has placed within you. Remember something so simple, yet long forgotten. You were born from fullness, not from lack. You come from an infinite source, not from a land of limits. And when you live in alignment with that truth, you do not just change your own life, you open a door for others to walk through. For a soul that has awakened always carries enough light to guide those around it. Today, I thank you for being here, for listening not only with your ears, but with your heart. The question I leave with you does not need to be answered right away. Let it live within you. And if one day, in a quiet moment, you hear the answer rising from within, know that it is no coincidence. It will be the moment you are ready to live as though you were born to prosper. And indeed, you were born to prosper, not because you are better than anyone else, but because you are the child of a God who knows no limits. Consciousness is the beginning. All change starts in the mind. Nothing in the outer world can truly change. If the inner world continues to operate in its old patterns, no technique, strategy, or method can bring lasting results if the mind remains ruled by fear, scarcity, and limitation. The mind is not merely a container for thoughts, it is the gateway to all manifestation. Consciousness is the first soil through which any seed must pass before it takes shape in reality. Outer change does not begin with action, but with a quiet shift within. Only when consciousness changes will the world respond differently. A person may learn many things, read hundreds of books, listen to thousands of talks. Yet, if their consciousness remains the same, they will keep living the same experiences in new forms. They change jobs, but carry the same insecurity. They move to a new place, yet still bear the same limiting beliefs. They meet new people, but continue to recreate the same patterns of hurt. This is because consciousness is the blueprint to which every experience must conform. It is not on the surface of thought, but deeper, where most seldom go, the layer of awareness that shapes beliefs, emotions, and the unseen perceptions that govern an entire life. No one can fake vibration. No one can fool the divine law with eloquent words. If deep down you still believe you are unworthy, then no matter how often you repeat positive affirmations, the results will mirror that root belief. It is not what you say that takes form, but what you silently accept. And that acceptance does not come from intellect, it comes from allowing truth to live within you. The world around you has no authority to define you. Your current conditions have no power to bind you. Any limitation you are experiencing does not originate from circumstances, but from the level of consciousness you are in. Change that level, and the entire picture changes What once seemed impossible suddenly becomes possible. Doors that seemed locked begin to open on their own. New people, new ideas, new currents begin to flow toward you, not because you are chasing them, but because you have become a place compatible with receiving them. Prosperity is not a reward. It is the natural outcome of a consciousness aligned with truth, a consciousness that knows where it comes from, what it carries, and what it deserves. You do not need to prove yourself to be granted anything. You need only to recognize it, and that recognition is the beginning of all transformation. Not tomorrow, not when you finish learning something new, not when the world changes, but right now, when you accept that your mind is the place where everything begins, and that you have the power to choose again from the root. The key lies in observation, not to judge, but to awaken. When you look into your mind without resisting it, you begin to see the structures at play, the familiar phrases, the recurring reactions, the assumptions you have never questioned. And the moment the light of awareness touches them, what once seemed fixed begins to dissolve. Consciousness works that way. It does not need to be repaired, it only needs to be illuminated. You do not have to understand every mechanism to shift your level of consciousness. You only need to begin with a clear decision, not to live by the old pattern anymore, not to keep recreating lack, doubt, or silent sacrifice without purpose. You do not need to destroy the old self. You simply stop letting it lead. And when you pause, grow still, and begin to hear another voice, softer, steadier, not the shout of fear, but the whisper of truth. You know you have reached a new beginning, a place where you do not have to prove anything, a place where you are no longer trying to become someone, but finally living as yourself, the one who has always carried within the seed of prosperity, love, and strength. From that beginning, action is born not from compulsion, but from wholeness. You no longer act to become valuable. You act because you already are. You no longer pray from lack, you pray from fullness. You no longer speak to be heard. You speak because the truth within is too abundant to be contained. And when your life begins to be led from this level of consciousness, everything has a different language, a different rhythm, a different outcome, not because the world has changed, but because you have shifted. That is why you do not need to wait for anything outside to start. You do not need a new method, a new person, or a new timing. You need only to enter the depths of yourself, and from there, begin again, as if this is the first time you have truly lived. Real change does not begin from the outside in. It begins from the inside out, from stillness into awareness, from awareness into acceptance, from acceptance into expression, and then nothing can stand in your way, for you have returned to the true starting point, the place where everything begins, and where everything is possible. God wants you happy, and that is an eternal truth. It is no accident that you carry within you the desire to live a full life. It is no coincidence that your heart stirs whenever you think of pure joy, absolute peace, or the feeling of being free to live as your true self. These things are not the product of a vague imagination, but signals from a deeper place, the place where God has placed the imprint of His own nature within you. God wants you happy, not as a reward given only to those who meet certain standards, but as an eternal truth, ordained from the moment you were created. Joy is not a rare gift. Happiness is not a selective privilege, and wholeness is not the exception. They have always been part of your very being. Because you are the living image of the perfect one, God did not create man to endure suffering. He did not lead you into this life so you could strain under injustice, disappointment, or lack. There is nothing in His divine nature that takes pleasure in seeing you miserable, weary, or confined by self-imposed limits. All suffering comes not from God, but from misunderstandings about him, people have created an image of God that is punitive, conditional, and controlling. They say God blesses only the worthy, rejects those who err, and turns his back on the weak. But that is not the true portrait of God. It is a distortion shaped by fear and guilt, passed down through generations. The truth is, God does not change. His love is never more or less. His acceptance does not depend on outward behavior. He does not sit above to judge. He lives within you as life itself, as light, as love that flows without ceasing. So why do so many still suffer? Why does happiness seem so rare if God truly wants you happy? The answer is not with him, it is with you. You have been given the power of free will. You have the right to choose how you see life, how you think about yourself, how you open or close your heart to receive. God does not intervene with force. He will not compel you into happiness, but he continually whispers to you that this is your true path. And when you agree with that truth, when you begin to believe that happiness is a birthright, not a prize to be won, everything in your life begins to respond accordingly. True happiness does not come from grand events or milestones set by society. It does not arrive when you achieve something, but when you recognize what has always been there. It needs no conditions, only awareness. You do not have to wait until everything is perfect to allow yourself to be happy. If your happiness depends on circumstances, you will spend your life in waiting. But if you remember that happiness is the natural state of the soul, you will realize you can return to it at any moment as though coming home to the place that has always been yours. God has already placed within you the blueprint of joy. Children are living proof of this. A child needs no reason to be happy, no condition to laugh. They live in the natural expression of trust, wonder, and the feeling of being loved. But as we grow, we learn to put conditions on happiness. We learn to delay joy, control emotions, and doubt anything that comes easily. Slowly, we forget that we were born to be happy, not after pleasing someone, not after achieving something, but from the very beginning. One of humanity's greatest mistakes is believing we must do something extraordinary to be loved, to be worthy of happiness. But you do not need to be special to be loved. You are loved because you exist. And because you exist, you are worthy of happiness. This is a law that cannot be reversed. When you stop arguing with this truth, when you cease placing conditions on your well-being, something remarkable happens. Life becomes lighter. The world responds more gently. And within you opens a space where every good thing can enter. No one comes into this world to suffer. No one is born to a life of resignation. You were not sent here as a test. You were sent as an expression of pure love. And true love never wishes you pain. True love wants you free, alive, and at peace. That is why happiness is not a selfish choice. It is a sacred responsibility. When you are happy, you become the place where God is revealed. When you live with joy, you are living proof of truth. So do not wait any longer. Do not let anyone or anything decide when you may live in joy. Stop now. Listen to the invitation from within. Accept that you were created to be happy, not because you are perfect, but because you were born from perfection. Not because you have done everything right, but because you come from one who cannot be wrong. Happiness is not a destination. It is the place you have always belonged, and God is still waiting for you to return there. Every single moment, the perfect plan has already been written. Nothing in this universe happens by accident. Every star holds its place in order. Every season arrives in its time. Every living being carries within it a path set long before. In the same way, your life is not a string of random, meaningless events. There is a plan already written, a divine blueprint shaped before you ever took form. a path laid out not by human hands but by infinite wisdom. This plan is not a chain to bind you, but a map leading you back to the wholeness that has always been yours. It does not force you forward, but stands ready to welcome you home. No coercion, no threat, only the quiet perfection that exists side by side with your freedom to choose. God does not create a soul and then abandon it. He did not send you into this world to stumble blindly through chaos, nor to fend for yourself amid the turbulence of life. Every soul is born with a perfect plan, in which every element, your innate abilities, your family, the time of your arrival is arranged to support you in the journey of remembering your true nature. No detail is wasted, no challenge is without purpose, no turn is truly off course, for everything is part of the awakening, woven into a system of intelligence beyond human comprehension. The only reason you may not see this plan for a time is because you have been viewing life through the lens of fear and limitation. When you see only with the physical eyes, events appear as coincidence. You think you have failed, that you have taken the wrong path, that there is nothing unique about you, but when you step back and see with the inner eye, you realize that even the stumbles carry a message, even the suffering holds a lesson, and even the roads you thought were mistakes have been leading you back to your own center. This is the nature of the divine plan. It does not demand perfection from you, but it always leaves the way open for you to return to perfection. This plan does not require your full understanding in order to work, just as you do not need to understand the mechanics of the lungs to breathe. You do not need to grasp every layer of mystery to walk the path meant for you. All that is required is trust, an inner agreement that you have not been abandoned, not been forgotten, not been left without direction. No matter how far you have gone, no matter how long you have felt lost, if you stop and listen, you will see signs of the plan still all around you. A chance meeting, a book at the right moment, a strange dream, a quiet intuition, all are reminders that you are not truly off course. The truth is, you do not need to create a remarkable life. It has already been set in place. You need only remove the layers of doubt, the false ideas, the voices that are not your own, so you can see the path that has always been there. You do not need to strive to be chosen. You have always been chosen. You need not fear exclusion. No one can replace your role in this divine plan. And when you truly understand this, competition fades, comparison ends, urgency dissolves. You live from a deep inner calm because you know you are being guided. Not everyone remembers their plan from the start. Some must walk in darkness a long while before recognizing the light. Some must lose much before seeing the value of what remains. Some must lose themselves entirely before truly meeting their real self. Yet nothing is wasted. No stretch of road is without meaning. God's plan is not a straight, uneventful road. It is a symphony in which every note has its purpose, where every rise and fall carries a sacred tone. The wonder of this plan is that it is never rigid. It does not lock you into a fixed script, but shifts in harmony with your choices. Every time you change your awareness, the plan adjusts, opening a way that better fits you. Each time you decide to live closer to truth, the plan grows clearer, easier, lighter, and a moment will come when you no longer need to search because you will live as though everything has been perfectly arranged. Not because you are lucky, but because you have agreed this perfect plan is not in some distant future. It is here now, present in the smallest choices of today. When you act from awareness instead of reaction, when you speak from love instead of fear, when you grow silent to listen instead of arguing to win, you are bringing yourself back into alignment with the deepest path of your soul. Step by step, you begin to see life no longer as something to control, but as a flow you can trust, a journey you can savor, a plan you can surrender to completely. No force is needed, no chasing required, only remembrance. For the plan has always been there, perfect, ready, waiting for you to walk into it. Why things still don't feel right, inner conflict, is the root. Have you ever wondered why, despite all your effort, all your learning, and all your prayers, things still haven't moved in the right direction? Why you've tried to live positively, affirm your beliefs, and follow noble teachings, yet reality keeps replaying the same old scenarios? Why the light hasn't poured in even though you've opened the door? The answer is not found in outward action, but in an inner fracture, an unseen yet powerful divide where the mind says one thing, but the heart does not truly believe it. One part of you wants to move forward. Another part refuses permission. One side longs for success. Another feels undeserving. One half craves freedom. The other fears being abandoned. And it is from these quiet contradictions that the journey slows, tangles, and loses clarity. Inner conflict is when two opposing signals are broadcast from the same source. It keeps you in a constant state of stepping forward and pulling back, opening up yet holding guard, hoping yet doubting. Spiritually, it is a state of disunity, of non-alignment, and the divine law does not respond to your words, it responds to the energy you emit. When you send out the vibration of division, life responds with situations of confusion. When you ask for the good, yet fear you are unworthy. What you are truly projecting is fear, not faith, and the world can only mirror that level of energy, nothing more, nothing less. This is the power of voice within, not just a voice you hear, but a space you return to, not the loud voice that tries to drown out fear, but the quiet space inside, where you truly know what is real. That place does not argue, does not try to prove, does not need noise. It only needs you to listen. For when you return there, you are no longer led by outer contradictions, no longer the product of unconscious programming. You become the one who recalibrates the entire operating system within, and only from that place can true unity begin. Most inner conflicts stem from beliefs you did not choose. They come from the teachings of adults when you were young, from society's judgments, from unhealed wounds. You were taught that you must sacrifice to be loved, endure to prove your worth, shrink to be accepted, yet at the same time, your soul longs for the opposite, to live authentically, to expand, to shine. When both signals coexist, you cannot walk in wholeness. You are pulled between the ego and the soul, between the old voice and the new invitation. That is why, even when you know the truth, you may not yet be living it. To break free from conflict, you must first pause, not to surrender, but to listen deeply, not to find fault, but to recognize the pattern. You must look within and ask, what belief am I carrying that no longer serves me? Which voice has kept me small in fear? What have I believed about myself that is not truly the truth? And you must be willing to see that. At times, you are the one blocking the transformation you have been praying for, not because you are flawed, but because you were never taught to see the conflict clearly. Only when you see it do you have the power to change. You do not need to erase the past. You simply stop letting it lead. You do not need to prove anything. You simply accept that you can choose again. And from the moment you choose to live from unity, every door begins to open. Not because the outside has changed, but because you are no longer divided within. When you speak of love, and truly believe it, love will come. When you desire abundance, and feel no guilt for wanting it, prosperity will find you. When you say, I am worthy, and your heart rests in that truth, Life will rearrange itself in ways you could never have imagined. Inner conflict is the mist that clouds the path. But mist is not a wall. It disappears when the sun rises. And that sunlight is clear awareness, the return to the inner space where there is no struggle between the parts of you. From that place, you are no longer the seeker of light, you are the light. You are no longer the one begging for peace. You are the place where peace is revealed. No more tug of war. No more two directions, only one flow. Clear, gentle, and aligned. That is why the greatest shift is not in doing more, but in dissolving the conflicts that hold you back. And when you do, you will see that the outer world was never the problem. The true challenge was always within, where you had not yet allowed yourself to be fully you. And now you can choose differently. No noise, no striving, only a return to that silent space where the true voice speaks without words. This is the power of voice within, not just a voice you hear, but a space you return to, and from that place, everything begins to change. Remove luck from your vocabulary. There is no such thing as chance. There is no such thing as chance. No event unfolds merely by good fortune. No one happens into prosperity. And no one suddenly steps into the light without an inner process of deep alignment first taking place. The notion of luck is one of the most subtle illusions the human mind has ever created to avoid its sacred responsibility in shaping reality. When you believe someone else's success is due to luck, you silently reject the creative power operating within yourself. When you call an opening random, you overlook the entire foundation of consciousness that labored to produce that moment. And when you tell yourself you are simply less lucky than another, you unconsciously declare that you are not of the same creative nature as the source that birthed the universe. Reality does not run on chance, it runs on frequency, on resonance, on unbreakable law. What you encounter does not reflect random life events. It reflects with precision what you have consistently broadcast at the deepest level, not your fleeting words in a moment, but your ongoing state of being. A person is not granted divine favor because they happen to be in the right place at the right time they receive, because they have become a place fully compatible with what is to be revealed. They do not plead for luck. They live as though the good is inevitable. They do not act from fear. They act from the knowing that every door opens when the inner state is aligned. When you keep the word luck in your inner dictionary, you unconsciously place yourself in a passive role. You let life roll like a dice game. You wait for your turn, your chance, your perfect day. But the soul does not live by probability, it lives by truth. And truth does not change, does not waver, does not favor one person over another. Each person carries the same power, the same capacity to access the divine flow. The only difference is who remembers and who is still forgetting. Eliminating the concept of luck does not make you rigid or overly rational. On the contrary, it shifts you into a far stronger belief that the universe is not random, that a divine order operates through all events, and that you are an inseparable part of that order. You do not need to be chosen, for you have always been chosen. You do not need to wait for opportunity, for opportunity is born from the state of your presence. When you live at a clear frequency, the world responds with matching conditions. When you think of yourself as lucky, you still position yourself in dependence. But when you know you are a creator, you step into an active role, not with arrogance, but with absolute humility before the divine power working through you. From now on, replace luck with resonance. Replace chance with precise alignment. Look again at the moments you call coincidence and ask yourself, what within me arranged that? What belief? What state? What awareness opened that door? And if you observe honestly, You will always find the thread and nudge you followed, an action without fear, an affirmation born from unity, a timely letting go, all triggers for manifestations you once mistook for luck. Life is not a series of trials where you sometimes win the prize. It is a flow you are invited to step into every day, every moment. And to live in that flow, you do not need a lucky number, you only need remembrance. Remember that you are not separate from the source. Remember that you do not live under exceptions, but under the absolute law of response. Remember that no one can be luckier than you, because wholeness makes no distinctions. It only waits for your agreement. Picture a door designed just for you, always open, waiting for you to arrive with the right frequency. That door does not vanish, does not close, does not change ownership. It only waits for alignment. And when you begin to live from a place without doubt, without waiting for something random to happen, you will find that wonders are no longer rare. They become as natural as breath, as steady as a heartbeat, not because you hit the jackpot, but because you have returned to the right wavelength. From today, step out of the waiting posture. Live as though every good thing has a clear reason to come to you, not because you are more special than others, but because you have chosen to stop living as one ruled by fate. Declare to yourself, I do not need luck, for I live by divine law. I do not expect randomness, for I live in precision. I do not need a miracle from outside, for I am the miracle expressing from within. And when you live this way, the world will no longer answer with chance, but with a higher order where everything is in right time, right place, right direction, not because of luck, but because you are ready. The law of mind. Thought is the cause of all results. No result in life appears out of nothing. Every circumstance, every experience, every event, no matter how small, has a cause behind it. And that cause is not in other people, not in the world, and certainly not in fate. It lies in the quietest place within you, where thought is formed, sustained, and steadily sent out. Thought is the cause. Everything else is merely the effect. This is the essence of the law of mind, the unchanging principle of the universe that no one can escape, no one can bypass, and from which no one is excluded. When you understand this law, you stop asking, why is this happening to me? And begin to ask, what in my thought has allowed this to be expressed? You no longer look at circumstances with blame or resentment. You turn inward to find the root cause. The thought is not what flickers across your mind for a few seconds. Thought is the sustained state of energy you hold. It is the belief you have kept for so long that you no longer recognize it as a choice, but mistake it for truth. And it is precisely these deep beliefs that are producing every result in your life. The law of mind shows no favoritism. It does not work better for the wealthy, does not favor the educated, does not restrict those who have erred. It responds only to the frequency of thought you maintain. If you live in the consciousness of fear, you will see threats everywhere. If you sustain thoughts of lack, then no matter how many opportunities appear, you will only perceive limits. Conversely, if you live in the belief of abundance, you will always meet the right people at the right time, with the right resources. If you choose to believe that life supports you, then every detail in your day will affirm it. Not because the world has changed, but because you have shifted from within. The physical world is only the screen. Your mind is where the script is written. What you see outside can never exceed what you allow inside. When you change your thought, you are not merely shifting perspective, you are altering the very vibrational field from which you live. And it is that vibration that commands reality. You do not need to manipulate results. You need only to return to adjusting the cause. You do not need to control others. plead for help, or repair each circumstance. You need only to choose a different thought, not the surface thought, but the root belief quietly directing everything. Thought not only creates personal experience, it shapes how you see the world. When your thought changes, you will notice what you never saw before. Opportunities have always been there, but you were not ready to recognize them. Support has always existed, but you carried the belief that you had to do it alone. Happiness has always been at the door, but you held tightly to the idea that you had to earn it first. The law of mind does not require perfection, only honesty. Look at what keeps repeating in your life and ask, what thought is feeding this? And if you are brave enough to see it, you will have the power to change it. No one can think for you. No one can plant thoughts for you. No one can rescue you from the choices of thought. You nurture each day. And this is not a burden, it is freedom. For if the cause lies where you can reach it, you are no longer a victim. You are not dependent. You do not need to wait for the outer world to change. You can choose right now, in stillness and simplicity, a new thought, more unified, more loving, more open, and let the divine law take care of the rest. Remember that thought is the raw material of everything you experience. Every sentence you speak to yourself is a seed. Every image you hold in mind is a blueprint. Every state you repeat is a command sent out. Nothing escapes this law. And when you live with that awareness, you begin to choose your thoughts with deep reverence, no longer letting the mind drift on old habits. You become the gardener of your own soul, tending each seed, watching each expression, adjusting whenever the old ways try to return. Thought is the cause. Results are only the visible tip. When you truly grasp this, you no longer obsess over present outcomes, because you know you can choose the cause again. You are no longer caught up in appearances. You go back to adjusting the depth, and in time, life ceases to be a chain of unconscious reactions and becomes a deliberate flow, one in which you are not only living, but also authoring each chapter, not by force, but by awareness, not by words alone, but by consistent choice of thought from within. The law of mind does not need your belief to operate, it always has, whether you notice it or not. But when you begin to live in alignment with it, you step out of the role of a bystander and into the role of a creator. You are no longer controlled by the world. You are the one who adjusts, no longer chasing results. You begin living from the cause. And from there, every result begins to change, not because you control everything, but because you have returned to the true seat of power, in thought, in awareness, in you, the indwelling Christ, the true treasure within you. Nothing in this world can compare to the treasure within you. No house, no achievement, no material possession can replace the sacred presence quietly alive in you at every moment. This treasure is not in the future, not in books, not in anyone else's hands. It is a state, a presence, a consciousness beyond words, what the sages of old called by an ancient name, the indwelling Christ, not a historical figure to be worshipped, but a living principle waiting to be awakened from within. The indwelling Christ is the purest, most whole, most eternal part of you. It is neither born nor does it die. It is untouched by circumstances, unclouded by childhood, unrestricted by identity. It has always been there watching you, loving you, waiting for you to remember. Every journey you have taken, every mistake you have made, every pain you have felt has been but dust settling over that light. Yet the light never goes out. It waits for one thing only, your readiness. When you return to the indwelling Christ, you do not become someone else. You simply come back to yourself. You do not strive to shine. You simply stop covering the light already within. And from that moment, everything begins to change. You no longer seek worth in recognition. because you have touched the eternal worth inside. You no longer beg for love, because you know you are love. You no longer search for strength, because you realize you have always been the embodiment of a power greater than any human name could define. The indwelling Christ is not reached through effort, but through surrender. You cannot attain it by accumulating knowledge, but only by entering deep stillness, the place where the mind ceases its analysis and the heart begins to remember, not remembering through memory, but through vibration, remembering that you have never been separate from the source, that you have nothing to prove, that you are already complete in your own being, and that every outer journey is but the reflection of the journey homeward. The world teaches you to seek the light. The indwelling Christ reminds you that you are the light. The world tells you to reach higher. The indwelling Christ whispers that you need only return. The world insists you must change yourself to be better. The indwelling Christ quietly assures you that you need only remember your true self, for you have always been perfect in your original state. And once you begin living from that state, the outer world loses its power to control you, not because you resist it, but because you are no longer in resonance with the frequency of fear on which it operates. The true treasure is not in the hands of the strong, but in the heart of the one who remembers that you are not this body, remembers that every limit is illusion, remembers that nothing outside can determine the wholeness within, and from that remembering, you cease to seek. You begin to express. You no longer long to be filled. You begin to give. You no longer live as a cup waiting to be poured into, but as a spring that flows endlessly, without depletion, without condition. The indwelling Christ is not far away. It is the softest voice within you, the deepest silence amid the noise. It does not arrive in excitement, but in absolute stillness. When you pause in the rush of life and take a deep breath, you can sense it not with your senses, but with your presence. And in that moment, you know you have always been guided not by what is outside, but by a higher wisdom living in you. No one can steal that treasure from you. No one can cause you to lose it. The only thing that can make you forget is yourself. Yet, thankfully, a single decision to return is enough for every door to open again. You need not be saintly. You need not meet some mystical standard. You need only be honest. You need only be willing. You need only be humble enough to say, I have gone far enough, and now I choose to come home. The indwelling Christ is not the destination. It is the true beginning of every profound journey. When you live from that place, you are no longer swept along by life. You become the one who steers it. You no longer need to do more, only to be present at the right frequency. You no longer need to control, only to align. You no longer need to brace yourself to be strong. You only need to release enough to touch the power within. The treasure is not out there. It is alive in you, and it waits not to be found, but to be remembered, not to be possessed, but to be embodied. For once you have truly stepped into union with the indwelling Christ, you are no longer the seeker of light. You are the light that leads. You are no longer the student learning how to live better. You are the place where life itself is revealed in its purest form. And from there, you no longer need to ask, how do I prosper? For you are living from the place where prosperity is not pursued, but is the inevitable result of a soul that has come home, the art of blessing, changing the world through thought. Blessing is not merely a spiritual ritual. It is the highest art of an awakened mind. For each time you send forth a good thought, you are directly influencing the vibrational structure of the world. Every blessing is a wave moving through space and time, touching where it is directed and returning to you in ways beyond measure. No one can see your thoughts, but the world always feels them. And when you practice the art of blessing with intention, you are not only transforming others, you are transforming yourself. Every thought is energy. When you think of someone with gratitude, with love, with belief in the good within them, you lift your own vibration to a higher plane. That vibration becomes the foundation for everything you manifest in reality. Blessing is not an act to appear virtuous. It is an acknowledgement that every soul is on its journey home, and you choose to look at the divine part of them rather than the unfinished expression. You do not deny truth, you simply choose to connect with the deeper truth, the part of their being that cannot be harmed, and in that moment, you touch the invulnerable part within yourself as well. When you bless, you are sending a clear signal that you no longer live in a consciousness of separation. You no longer need to win against someone, be above someone, or prove yourself right. You choose unity. You choose to see beauty even in the unfinished. You choose to bring light into the dark, not by fighting, but by being present. From that place, you become a healer, not through action, but through presence, not through effort, but through vibration. This is the power of voice within, not just a voice you hear, but a space you return to. Blessing is speaking from that inner voice. It need not be in words, for every thought sent from that space has the power to shift the currents of reality. You do not need to be heard or thanked, because you know you, too, are healed in the process. When you bless another, you are declaring to the entire universe that you have chosen to live from love rather than reaction, from empathy rather than judgment, from clarity rather than anger. There are people you cannot change with words. There are situations you cannot control. There are wounds you cannot erase through action. But you can always bless. You can send a current of loving thought to the one who hurt you, not to make them right, but to make yourself free. You can bless those you disagree with, not to condone, but to keep yourself from being pulled into a lower frequency. Each blessing you give is a reaffirmation of your energetic sovereignty. You are not at the mercy of the outer world. You choose to create influence in return. The art of blessing does not only apply to others, it begins with you. Bless the body you inhabit, even when it is tired. Bless your heart, even when it has been hurt. Bless the mistakes, the imperfect choices, the winding roads of your past, not to erase them, but to transform them. For everything that has happened has brought you here to the place where you are aware enough to choose differently, to live differently, to no longer react from unconscious habit. The thoughts you send to yourself become the vibrational environment you live in, and from that environment, all good begins to manifest without strain. When you truly master the art of blessing, you are no longer attached to outcomes. You do not bless to receive you. Bless because you have become the flow itself. And the flow does not demand, does not wait for return, does not stop at resistance. It simply moves because that is its nature. And life, like water, always follows the law of return. The thought you send out is the thought you will live in. No exceptions. This world does not need more arguments. It needs more people who quietly bless, people who choose to think well of others without needing a reason, people who choose to see light even when surrounded by darkness, people who do not use words to criticize, but thoughts to heal. And you can be one of them. You need not be prominent. You need not be known. You need only remember where true power lies. Not in reaction, but in presence. Not in control, but in inner freedom. Blessing is not a one-time act. It is a way of life. A choice, repeated so often that it becomes your nature. And when it becomes your nature, you no longer have to try. You simply are. That presence alone is enough to change a room, a situation, a person, even a generation. No noise, no stage, just a right thought sent from the right space. And that is where you become the channel through which a higher order is revealed quietly, profoundly, and unshakably, connecting with your true desire, listening to the call of the soul. There is a wordless call rising from deep within you, gentle as breath, yet steady as the pull of the universe. It is not the noise of ambition, nor the echo of others' expectations. It is the primal call of the soul, the voice that has whispered through every season of your life, through growth, through trials, through failure, through hope, and sometimes through lostness. This is your true desire, unclouded by prejudice, undistorted by fear, untouched by circumstance. And when you truly pause to listen, you will realize it has never stopped calling your name. True desire is not an external goal, it is an inward direction. It is not to prove, but to express, not to climb somewhere, but to fully live what you already are. Each person is born with a unique calling on unrepeatable design, an irreplaceable piece in the whole, and your task is not to hunt for it in the world, but to reconnect with it from within the place where everything you truly long for was planted, long before you could put it into words. We often confuse desire with craving. Craving comes from lack. True desire comes from fullness. Craving is a reaction to what you do not have. True desire is the call of what you already carry. When you crave, you feel you must obtain something to be whole. When you live from true desire, you are whole before it arrives. That is why true desire carries no pressure, no urgency, no need to prove, only clarity, a quiet pull, and an unshakable knowing that you are on the right path. To connect with true desire, you do not need to learn more, you need to remove. Remove the old voices that say you are not enough. Remove the beliefs that someone like you cannot. Remove the molds that define what success, worth, and meaning are supposed to be. As long as you are ruled by these limits, you will live by what you think you should want, rather than what you are truly called to be. And so, you will remain busy, yet never satisfied, always striving, yet never touching life in its fullness. True desire does not need noise. It appears in moments when you are quiet enough to notice, when you walk alone, when you write words no one will read, when you help someone unseen, when you weep for reasons you cannot explain. This is the soul speaking not through the mind, but through a state of being. And if you listen closely enough, you will see more clearly than any plan could show, for the real call does not come from the head, but from deeper still, a place where you no longer think, you simply know. Connecting with true desire is also the first step toward liberation. When you know what is yours, you stop comparing. When you know what you are here to do, you are no longer pulled into what others are doing. When you live your calling, you no longer need motivation. Each step is driven from within. From that place, everything you need arrives at the right time, in the right way, through the right people, not to push you faster, but to walk in rhythm with your soul. True prosperity is not having more. It is living the life you were made to live. When you live from there, you are no longer separate from the source. You become a channel, a living current of divine will. You no longer have to ask if you are on the right path. Every step becomes the path itself. You no longer force effort. Every action flows from unity. True desire is the heartbeat of the indwelling Christ within you. When you align with it, you no longer live in fragmentation. You do not do one thing while longing for another. You do not show one face while craving something else. You become whole, and that wholeness is the strongest signal you can send. The world is not changed by those who are better, but by those who are more real, those who dare to live their true call, even when it makes no sense, even when it is not easy, even when it looks like no one else's path. From today, begin to turn inward and ask yourself, what within me longs to live? What makes my heart light up each time I think of it? What have I always known but never dared to admit? And when you are honest with these questions, you will reach a space that needs no validation, no agreement, no guarantee. You will only need to walk step by step in trust, for true desire will never lead you astray. It always leads you home to the deepest self, where everything you have ever sought has always been waiting for your return. Effective prayer, affirming from wholeness. Have you ever wondered why some prayers seem to go unanswered, while others bring about profound, grace-filled transformation? Have you ever listened to yourself in the act of praying and realized you were speaking to heaven from a place of lack, anxiety, or pleading as though asking for something you were not worthy to receive? If you are here, listening now, I want to ask you something simple. Have you ever prayed as one who already has everything, rather than one who is lacking? Thank you for being here, for listening not only with your ears, but with your heart. Effective prayer does not begin with worry, but with union. It is not about using words to persuade God to change your circumstances, but about an inner recognition that you are living in a reality where what you ask for is already true. Instead of begging, you affirm. Instead of hoping, instead of looking at what is missing, you look with eyes that already see wholeness. This is what makes the difference between a prayer that remains suspended and a prayer that transforms your entire consciousness. Every true prayer must begin with the acknowledgement that you have always been in wholeness, not a wholeness that comes from outcomes, but one that exists because you are already united with the source. When you say, I am healthy, it is not because your body has fully recovered, but because you are issuing a declaration aligned with the divine mind, a place where there is no illness, nor limitation, nor loss. When you say, I am guided, it is not because you can see the whole path, but because you know you cannot be lost as long as you remain connected. In prayer, what matters most is not the choice of words, but the state of consciousness behind them. A prayer can be a single sentence. Yet if it comes from the place that knows it is already a divine truth, it can initiate deep alignment across many layers of reality. This is why so many people repeat prayers without any real change, because their consciousness still stands in lack, still believes they must do something to be worthy, still carries the sense of separation from the divine mind. Effective prayer is the perfect harmony of word, vibration, and belief. It does not need to be long, but it must be deep. It does not need drama, but it must carry conviction. And the deepest thing you can do is not to speak more, but to be silent enough to listen. Listen to whether what you are praying for truly springs from a divine longing or is merely a reaction to fear. Listen to whether you are speaking as one already united with the divine mind, or pleading from a place of separation. For the truth is this: God does not respond out of pity. He responds through alignment. Think of prayer as a wave. If you send it out from a low frequency where doubt, insecurity, and pressure reside, it will be broken, distorted, and unable to merge with the higher frequency where the solution already awaits. But if you send it from the frequency of gratitude, trust, and unity, every door will open. Not because you have convinced heaven, but because you have returned to the place where divine power can operate through you. To practice this, begin with something you deeply long for. Do not say, please let me have, but say, I am living in the truth that it is being made manifest. Do not say, I don't know what to do, but say, the divine wisdom within me is guiding my every step. Do not say, please heal me, but say, I accept the divine health flowing through me now. And as you speak this way, you are reweaving the vibrational field of your body, your thoughts, and your inner world. You are living as though what you prayed for has already happened, and that is when the true miracle begins. Prayer is not meant to change God's mind, it is meant to change you, to lift you into the frequency where divine truth is always present. And from that place, you no longer have to strive, for life begins to move through you. You no longer have to hold on, for you are being carried. You no longer need to control, for you are flowing in a river far greater than the self can comprehend. This is the river of grace, and grace can only flow to you when you stop blocking it with desperate pleading and open the way for it through alignment. So, if you are hearing these words now, ask yourself, from what frequency is my prayer being sent? Am I affirming divine truth or repeating my fears? And if today I were to pray not to ask, but to affirm what has always been present, how would that change me? You do not need anyone to confirm your answer, for if you truly listen, you will hear a gentle whisper within. You have never lacked anything. Simply remember, and from that place, every prayer you speak becomes light, becomes a living current, becomes a bridge between you and the fullness of divine will from which you have never been separated. The spiritual atmosphere, what do you bring into the world? Every person who steps into a room carries with them a unique spiritual atmosphere, an invisible yet undeniable field of energy that influences every person, every situation, and every outcome around them without saying a word, without taking any action. Your presence alone is already a statement. Some people enter and the room becomes lighter, warmer, and easier to breathe in. Others enter and the space seems to contract, becoming tense and stifling. This does not come from appearance or speech, but from the spiritual atmosphere they carry. And what you bring into the world each day is the unseen element that has the greatest impact on everything you experience. Your spiritual atmosphere is not a fleeting emotion, but the sum of the state of consciousness you have sustained over time. It is the result of the thoughts you habitually think, the beliefs you quietly nurture, the reactions you repeat daily. If you live in fear, worry, and doubt, then the atmosphere you carry will cast a gray, muted veil over everything you touch, not because life lacks light, but because you are covering it with the very cloud of energy formed within your own mind. On the other hand, if you live in gratitude, acceptance, and trust, the atmosphere you radiate becomes a gentle yet powerful light, one that makes others feel safe, open, and drawn toward you. You cannot disguise your spiritual atmosphere, no matter how polished your words or how controlled your expression. The vibrational field you emit will always be sensed by others instinctively, naturally, and deeply. This is why some people don't have to say much or try to impress anyone, yet still draw others to them. It is because they carry a sense of inner stillness. They do not react. They are present. They do not try to control. They let life flow through them. And it is this stillness that touches the soul of another, for everyone is searching for that, even if they do not know its name. A spiritual atmosphere cannot be cultivated overnight. It is nourished each time you choose the right thought instead of slipping back into old patterns. Each time you choose peace over reaction. Each time you hold gratitude even in difficulty. Each time you are silent long enough to connect with divine truth, rather than seeking answers from outside. Every small choice creates another ripple in your field of energy. Over time, these ripples gather into a new atmosphere, lighter, brighter, clearer. The world does not need more people who merely speak truth. It needs more people who carry it. For when you stand in the right state, you do not need to teach anyone. The mere fact of your presence becomes the teaching. You do not need to change others. You yourself become the invitation for them to remember who they are. When you stand in a clear atmosphere, You create a space where others can lower their defenses, turn inward, and rediscover what they have always carried. This is the deepest form of healing, not from technique, but from the very state you embody. Your spiritual atmosphere is also the decisive factor in the results you create, not your skill, not your effort, not your circumstances. You could take all the right steps, but if you carry fear, doubt, and pressure, the results will mirror that state. Conversely, you could be without all the answers, but if you act with trust, love, and clarity, reality will arrange itself to respond in kind. The universe does not respond to the words you speak, but to the vibration you emit. And that vibration comes from the spiritual atmosphere you maintain. When you step into a new day, you carry more than your schedule and tasks. You carry your atmosphere. It goes before you, lingers after you, and shapes every interaction, however small. A meeting can change simply because one person enters with stillness. A tense situation can ease because someone holds clarity. A relationship can begin to heal because one person chooses to radiate acceptance instead of judgment. You do not need to be given permission to do this. You have always had it. And when you truly understand this, you will no longer wish to blame circumstances, for you will know that you are the strongest factor shaping how everything unfolds around you. You will begin to take time each day to tune your spiritual atmosphere, just as a musician tunes their instrument before playing, for you cannot create a beautiful harmony if you are out of tune within yourself. The atmosphere you carry is the silent music playing all day long. Choose its melody well. You do not need to do something grand to change the world. You need only to step into life each day carrying an atmosphere that is clear enough, bright enough, true enough. From that place, you are no longer the one trying to force an outcome. You are the one holding the space for what is right to reveal itself. And the world, even if it does not see you, will feel you, for you are no longer a separate individual, but a doorway for light to pass through, silent, certain, and profound, opening the channel to receive wealth, clearing the inner space. Wealth does not come from the outside. It does not originate in numbers, possessions, or random opportunities. It begins with the mind's capacity to receive, and that capacity does not appear by chance. It emerges only when you clear the inner blockages, the layers of limiting beliefs, the emotions left unresolved, the old memories that leave a film of dust on the lens through which you view the world. Wealth, like light, does not need to be created. It only needs a space clear enough to pass through. You do not need to strive to become wealthy. You need only to open the channel of reception that has always been within you. Every person is born with a divine design, a natural flow toward fullness, creativity, and expansion. But over time, we begin to absorb beliefs that are not our own, that wealth is wrong, that prosperity is selfish, that money comes only through relentless struggle or rare luck. These beliefs are like spiritual debris, clinging to the sacred current within you, blocking the flow and keeping you in inner conflict. One part of you longs for abundance, while another still carries guilt, doubt, or fear about wealth. This inner contradiction is the greatest barrier to open the channel of reception. You do not need to add more. You need to release the old memories of failure. Release the narrow definitions of your worth. Release even the feeling that you must prove something before you are allowed to receive. Clearing the inner space does not mean denying the past. It means looking at it, feeling it, releasing it, and refusing to let it dictate your future. When your inner space becomes clear, wealth does not have to be summoned. It comes to you, like a river returning to its bed once the stones and silt have been cleared away. You cannot draw in anything if, deep down, you still believe you are unworthy. Sadly, this is the most common root belief that blocks reception. You may not speak it aloud, but unconsciously, you still feel you must do more, be perfect, or become someone else before you qualify to receive. These invisible conditions are like cracks in the vessel of your consciousness. No matter how much is poured in, abundance leaks out and disappears. Opening the channel of reception is the work of sealing those cracks by reaffirming your unconditional worth. No one needs permission to be prosperous. You have always been given that right, but you must remember it. And to remember, you must become still. This is the power of the voice within. Not just a voice you hear, but a space you return to. No external voice can teach you to be wealthy more than the quiet voice from your own depths, the place that knows. You did not come here merely to survive, but to express, not to compete, but to receive, not to fight for survival, but to live as the limitless expansion of the source. Each time you feel stuck, lacking, or worried about finances or the future, pause, not to find a new method, but to turn inward. Look at what you believe about money, about abundance, about your own ability. Do you believe it is hard? Do you believe others have it easier? Do you associate wealth with something outside the light? If so, that is the space that needs clearing, not to erase anything, but to invite the light back in, so that truth can realign everything that has been distorted. Opening the channel to receive is not about waiting for a miracle. It is an active, conscious state. It is choosing better thoughts each day. It is replacing an old reaction with a new response in each moment. It is choosing gratitude over complaint. It is seeing another person succeed and feeling joy instead of envy. It is ceasing to push away and beginning to allow. These subtle choices, repeated, open a channel so powerful that you no longer have to seek wealth. It will seek you. You do not need another course, another credential, another promise from someone else. You need only an inner space, clear enough for truth to resound. When truth is present, all forms of wealth know their way to you, not because you proved yourself, but because you returned to your rightful place, the place of the receiver, of the source, the place of one who remembers who they are. And when you are in that state, nothing can withhold what has been yours since the beginning. Remember, this wealth does not come to make you greater than anyone else, but to allow you to live more fully as yourself. It is a means, not an end, a result, not a reason. It arrives when you stop playing the role of the one who lacks and begin living as the one who is already full. Fullness does not mean stopping. It means moving without the need to compensate, giving without feeling loss, receiving without feeling debt. Open your heart and let life flow through you, like the river returning to the sea, not forced, not doubted, as simply the natural current of one who has truly cleared the space within, releasing the fear of failure. It holds no power anymore. The fear of failure is a subtle phantom. It does not shout. It does not roar like a storm. But it seeps quietly into every thought, every choice, every step you intend to take forward. It wears the robe of caution, disguises itself as logic, and hides in whispers that say, "Don't risk it. Wait a little longer. You're not ready yet." It does not bind you with chains, but with the very voice inside your head. And for most of a person's life, that voice has held them back, made them doubt themselves, slowed their steps, or stopped them altogether. Yet the truth is, the fear of failure has never had any real power. It only lives as long as you believe in it. Failure is not the end. It is a link in the chain of evolution Without failure, there is no learning. Without learning, there is no expansion. Without expansion, you will never truly know who you are. To fear failure, then, is to reject the very journey you were born to walk. But we have been trained to see failure as a stain, as something that proves we are not enough. That false definition has built an invisible prison in the mind, and as long as you live in that prison, you cannot receive true prosperity, because wealth does not come to those afraid to take a wrong step, but to those willing to keep moving forward. Letting go of the fear of failure does not mean becoming reckless. It means you no longer allow fear to decide who you will be. It means accepting that there is no path that is truly safe, and that in trying to protect yourself from pain, you actually shut yourself off from life's deepest experiences. For everything of value hides just beyond a cloud of uncertainty. Only when you step into that cloud with an open heart and unconditional trust does the light of truth break through. Fear of failure does not vanish in a single moment. It is dismantled through small, repeated acts. Each time you say what you truly think, you strip away some of its power. Each time you try something new, despite not being certain, you reclaim energy you once gave to it. Each time you fall and rise again with gentleness instead of judgment, you prove to yourself that failure cannot destroy you. It only makes you clearer, steadier, and more real. No one is immune to mistakes, but the one who is not bound by the fear of making them is truly free. When you no longer fear failure, you become more creative, more daring, more authentic. You stop building walls to please others. You stop reshaping yourself to fit a mold. You stop delaying your dreams out of the belief that you are not ready. You live as though you have permission to be wrong. And when you live that way, everything in your life begins to shift. Wealth does not demand perfection. It demands honesty. Honesty with yourself, with your journey, with your present abilities. When you face your fear head on, you reclaim the energy it once stole from you. And when you no longer run from failure, you unleash a vast reservoir of creativity that had been locked away. You become fully present in your actions, not to prove anything, but because you have embraced your wholeness, even in your imperfection. The fear of failure is not innate, it is learned. It grows from the times you were laughed at, compared, or judged. It clings to memory like dust on a mirror, distorting the image you see of yourself. But when you wipe that dust away, when you accept that your stumbles are part of life's living beauty, you begin to see clearly. Fear itself is the greatest failure. And when you no longer fear it, you begin to live with a deep serenity. No rushing, no straining, no hiding. You become lighter, clearer, more magnetic. From that place, everything begins to align, not because you control outcomes, but because you have stopped being controlled from within. Freedom from fear brings a quiet strength that no one can take from you. You no longer need success to feel worthy, and it is precisely when you stop depending on the result that better results come, because you no longer act from lack, but from fullness, not from fear, but from freedom. The fear of failure can survive only in the dark. When you bring it into the light of awareness, it dissolves. You don't need to fight it. You don't need to struggle to overcome it. You simply need to be fully present, acknowledge it, and then refuse to agree with it any longer. From that moment, it loses its power, and you step into a new space where anything is possible, because you are no longer limited by yourself. That is when you truly begin to live, not to avoid failure, but to live as though nothing can stop you from becoming who you are meant to be. It is already finished, living from complete faith. The ultimate truth does not lie somewhere in the future, but is present in this very moment. It is not something you must struggle to achieve. but something that has always existed behind every layer of doubt, worry, and longing. Everything you have been searching for is already complete, not on paper, not in terms of time, but at the deepest level of your spirit. Everything is ready. Wholeness does not need to be created. It only needs to be recognized. And when you live from complete faith in that truth, the outer world no longer sways you. You are no longer driven by lack, but guided by gratitude, no longer striving to get, but simply present to receive. Complete faith is not blind, belief in a specific outcome. It is the inner certainty that no matter the result, you are still whole. No matter how the world changes, no matter how unclear the path may seem, that you walk with peace because you know you are moving in the flow of God. Everything necessary will come when you are ready. Every door will open when you reach the right level of awareness. Every blessing comes not because you plead for it, but because you are aligned with it. Living from complete faith is not waiting for something to happen, but living as though it has already happened. Those who live in faith are not shaken by what their eyes see or ears hear. They are not swayed by temporary circumstances. They look at adversity and do not panic, because they know what the physical eyes see is only the final manifestation of a spiritual process still unfolding. They turn inward, adjust their vibration, reaffirm the truth, and allow the outer world to realign itself. This is not the denial of reality, but the conscious recreation of reality from its roots. When you live this way, you cease to be a victim of life and become a co-creator. The world is full of noise. Everywhere there is advice, strategies, formulas for success. But all of it is just a covering if you do not pause long enough to hear the voice within, for not every voice is truth. There is only one voice that truly knows the path you are meant to walk. That voice does not come from outside. It comes from your own center. It does not command. It does not force. It does not shout. It only whispers. And you can only hear it when you stop searching. When you release the need to control, when you trust enough to be still, then in that stillness, you realize you no longer have anywhere to go, because the place you are meant to be has never left you. Living from complete faith is living without questions, not because you have all the answers, but because you no longer need answers to take the next step. Every step becomes an affirmation. Every action becomes an expression of trust. Every present moment becomes proof that you are ready to live as someone already blessed, not someone seeking blessing. And in that state, everything begins to change without your effort to change it. Life begins to mirror the fullness you carry. People begin to treat you as you treat yourself. Money, opportunities, love, and health begin to flow in as natural consequences of a consciousness no longer divided. You do not prove your faith by outward success. You prove it by the peace you hold even when there is no visible result. You prove it by the gratitude you maintain even before you receive anything tangible. You prove it by the patience you practice not to wait, but to remain fully present. That is true power, not in making everything happen, but in being in the state where everything right happens on its own. Prosperity does not come from greater effort, but from deeper alignment. You do not need to do more. You need to harmonize more, not with the world, but with the truth within you, the truth that you do not need to be perfect to be loved. You do not need to have more to feel enough. You do not need to do everything right to be accepted. You have already been accepted from the moment you were created. Before you had a name, you were called good, and that calling has never changed. You only need to remember everything is already finished. No fixing required. No proving. No competing. Simply live from the place where you have already been made whole. Do not wait for something to happen before you believe. Believe. so that everything else can begin. Do not wait for light from the outside. Live as though you have always been that light, and then what you once hoped for will no longer be something to wait for, but the natural expression of one who is united with the Source, one who no longer asks whether they are worthy, but lives as though they have always known who they are. And from that place, nothing is missing, nothing is impossible, for you have returned to the right place at the right time, in the right role. You were created to live. That is complete faith. That is the truth. And that is where everything begins. You have not listened to these 16 parts with your ears, but with the deeper part of you, the part that has always known you were not born to chase the light. But to become that light, the wealth you seek is not in your account, but in your awareness. The peace you long for does not come from circumstances, but from union. And the faith you are awakening is not blind belief, but the living recognition that everything you need has already been given. You do not need permission to begin living as someone whole. Live as though you have never forgotten that truth. For once you remember, the entire universe will rise in unison to respond.